Shimson was a tzaddik to the point where Yankov thought that he's Mashiach, and like the Rambam Paskins in Hilchos Melachim, that only a tzaddik and a Talmud Chacham can be Mashiach. Somebody who's Haiki B'Teiras Hashem and he's a tzaddik and he's Mikayim Orah Mitzvahs, only he can be Mashiach. Yankov saw Shimson, and Yankov saw that he has the qualifications of Mashiach. He's a tzaddik, and the Haiki B'Teiras Hashem, he learns Torah. But when he saw his tragic end, so Yankov realized, no, he's not Mashiach. I'm hoping for your Yeshua Rabbeinu Shalom, send Mashiach. So who is Shimson? Tzaddik Nifla, who had Bix Yad Ishmayas, whose feats of strength were supernatural. You probably are familiar with what the Psukim tell us about the great strength, the muscular strength. It wasn't really muscular strength, impossible. The muscular strength of Shimson, as really we see in the last feat of the strength, that he pushed the pillars and the entire building came tumbling down. So Shimson was the tzaddik. On the other hand, Shimson had, he had relationships with the women of the Philistine, the Tmeyos, the Arelos, one after the other. What's going on? Who is Shimson? A dual personality. We can't understand what's going on with Shimson. Shimson was a Nazir. You probably remember, if not from the Nevi'im, so you would remember from the Haftarah of Parshas Nosai, which wasn't so long ago. He was a Nazir Mibeten, a Nazir from his very conception. His mother wasn't allowed to drink wine because she bears in herself a Nazir. And he was a Nazir all through his life, a Nazir Olam. And he was a Nazir Olam. And the Torah in Parshas Nosai tells us, Zeis Teiras HaNazir, B'yayim Elois Yemein Israel, Yavi Eisai, Al Pesach HaYoramayet. This is the Halacha of the Nazir. In the day that his Naziris expires, the last day of his Naziris, he brings his carbon to the Pesach HaYoramayet, and he comes there, Yavi Eisai, and Rashi says, and he brings that from Chazal, that in 3 places, Eisai means himself. He should bring himself. What's Pshat he should bring himself? The Torah should have said he should come. When I come, I come. I don't bring myself, I am myself. To understand the Nazirus of Shimson, Shimson went among the Philistine, and he saw a woman of the Bnei Philistine, and he told his father and his mother, Oisa kachli ki hi yashara b'yaynai. Take this woman from me as a wife, because yashara b'yaynai. She's okay as far as I'm concerned. So the parents told him, Ha'ayin b'chol ami isha kiyata haylech lekachas mebnei Philistine or Areilim. Among all the Yidden, there's no woman that you must resort to find your wife among the daughters of the Philistine, the Areilim. But they didn't know, his parents didn't know, Kimei Hashemhu. It was the will of Hashem that he should marry this Philistine woman. Ki ta'einahu mevakesh miPlishtim. Because Rabban Shalom was looking for a way to get entangled and start up with the Philistine, so that Shimson should marry this woman and he should have some encounter with the Philistine who came to the Chasana, and there was an argument, and he killed them all out, and that's what happened by the second woman that he married, and by the third woman that he married. Every time that he got involved with a Philistine woman, he killed out hundreds and thousands of Philistines. So the Rabban Shalom wanted him to get entangled with these Philistine women, so that Shimson should kill the Philistine and take the Nekama from the Philistine for the troubles that they caused to the Bnei Yisrael. This is what the pasuk tells us. That's what Rabban Shalom wanted him to marry these nice Philistines. We have to understand this. If it was the will of the Rabban Shalom, for some reason that we can't understand, that Shimson should take the nice Philistine, and that should be the instrument with what he will kill out the Philistine. So for that you needed that Shimson should be a Nazir, and that the Malach should come and give instructions to his mother that she should keep Bigdusha, and she shouldn't drink wine, and she should keep B'tahara, and that Shimson is never allowed to take a haircut because he's a Nazir, and the Torah says that a Nazir has Heilige Har, Kaddish Yiyah Gadol Peras Yarayshay. So in order to take the Nekama and the Philistine in the method that Rabban Shalom chose for Shimson, that this should be the way you should take Nekama and the Philistine, for that you needed a Gedosh Elyon, a Nazir, and the Nazir should go and desecrate himself with the women of the Philistine. Couldn't be a plain Yid, a lowly Yid, an Amoretz. He could have done that just as well. Why did you need a Nazir for that? There's a sefer from Rav Tzadok HaKayim. It's called Yisrael Kedoshim, and he gives a very, very elaborate and marvelous biur on the Inyan of Shimson. And he says, Klal Yisrael is a kaima shalayim, a structure, just like the structure of a human being. Everything you find in the anatomy of a human being, you will find in Klal Yisrael. A head, a body, hands, legs, everything. And in one day, in any given generation of Klal Yisrael, you will find Yidden that they will have a shaykhis, that they will correspond with the head of Adam Arishon. Others, they will identify themselves with the heart of Adam Arishon. The big Talmidei Chachamim, those who are the Moyach of Klal Yisrael, the intellectuals of Klal Yisrael, they identify themselves, and they are mushrish, they are rooted in the head of Adam Arishon. Baalei Tefillah are the heart of Adam Arishon. Those who do mitzvahs, they're the hands of Adam Arishon. In every generation, you're going to find the entire Ramach Eivarim and Shtagidim of Adam Arishon. Likewise, in the Meshech HaDayros, in the generations starting with Moshe Rabbeinu until Mashiach, you also will find that structure. In the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Yidden, the Daya, were the heads. It was a collection of heads. Everyone there was a head, and therefore they learned Torah and nothing more. They were heads, intellectual Yidden. The Dairis went down. David HaMelech was the heart of Klal Yisrael, and he built a Beis HaMikdash for Tefillah. Ulavdi b'chol avavachem, zu Tefillah, the heart. All the way down, 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 until the Yekvayim, until the soul, the heel and the soul. We are the last generation before Mashiach. We all hope, and justifiably so, that we are going to see Mashiach, because we can't go any lower. We reached rock bottom as far as Shifrus is concerned. We can't go lower. And the Tzaddikim, yet a generation before, the Chafetz Chaim said that we are already Ikras of the Mashiach, the heels of Mashiach. That's the lashon of the Gemara, Ikras of the Mashiach. The last generation are called Ikras of the Mashiach, Ikras Mashiach, or Ikras of the Mashiach. The heels of Adam Avisha. We are the heels. We are the heels, or the soles, on the bottom of the leg. So, every Yid identifies himself with any part of the structure of Adam Avisha. In the structure, in the guf of Adam Avisha, there were also tziponayim and sirens, nails, fingernails, and hair. By Klal Yisrael, there are also Yidden in every daya, or perhaps a collective of Yidden in the last daya, that they are the sires, the hair of Adam Rishon. Because the Mishnah says in Keilim that there are 10 Kedushas, 10 Kedushas in Eretz Yisrael, starting from the lowest Madreiga until the Kodesh HaKadoshim in the Beis HaMikdash. The lowest Madreiga, they are the Sayyidas, the hair. Now, among Klal Yisrael, the Shevet Dun is the lowest Madreiga, like Asher says in Parshas Truma, by Aliyah Van Achisana, the Yarat Shebeshvatim, the lowest Madreiga. The Shevet Dun always seemed to the Shevet Dun always seemed to get into trouble. They were the ones that in their encounter with Amalek attacked them because they carried an Avodah Zarah, Pesel Micha, the Avodah Zarah of Micha, and therefore they were evicted from the Machne Yisrael. There was the Machne of Klal Yisrael that they were protected from any harm from the Machne I believe that it works. Thanks anyway. The Machne Yisrael were protected with the Anani coverings from any harm, but those Amalek was able to attack those who were evicted from the Machne, from the Anani coverings, and those were the sinful ones in the Shevet Dun. amongst those who did Averis, and they didn't keep the family purity of Klal Yisrael, was one woman, Shevet Adam, and that was Shalaim is Bas Divri for the Shevet Adam. And Shevet Adam always gets into trouble. Put the addition on them. Shevet Adam were evicted from Klal Yisrael. Now, there is a part in the body which is also evicted from the structure of the body. The hair and the fingernails. We cut them off, they're cut off of the body, and they're thrown away. Shevet Adam was evicted from Klal Yisrael. They are the lowest madrega of Klal Yisrael. They are the Cyrus, the hair. They are not included in the machne of Kedushas Yisrael. That's how it seems on the surface. However, if we, in depth, really there's no such thing. There's no such thing that a Yid is evicted from Kedushas Yisrael. It seems that he is. There may be the silence are cut off. It seems that they may be evicted from Klal Yisrael, but no Yid will ever be evicted from Klal Yisrael. Ultimately, he will come to his tikkun. Adrabah, the Shevet Adam, their role is hama'asef l'chalamachnes. They bring back the Avedas, like Rashi says. They're Isaac and Asherah's Aveda. Anything that's lost, being that they're at the end of the Machne, they find the Avedas, they find the lost articles, and they bring them back. They become Asherah's Aveda. Even then, ultimately, will have his tikkun. There will be Hashavas Aveda. Raya Vayayim Ahu, when Mashiach will come, Yitaka B'Shayfa Gadol, Uvayu Ha'ayvdim B'Yeretz Asher V'Nidachem B'Yeretz Mitzrayim. There are lost ones that are going to come back. In fact, we're already seeing something like this today. It's like the drizzle before the downpour. The Tshuva movement, Yidden are coming back. Those who were torn off, those who were cut off, the hair, they're coming back. The hair is growing back. Shimson was from Dan. He's the Shayvish of the Neshamas of Dan. He's the Shayfet of Dan. And therefore, Shimson was in captivity by the Philistine at the end of his life. In other words, he was in captivity by the Tumah. The Philistine imprisoned him. He was in there, they controlled him. That means that he fell out of the Kedusha. Adrabah, in that state of captivity, he brought back Avedas, because there were many Jewish nefashos who were among the Philistine. And with Shimson having tumbling down the house, tumbling down that great building with thousands upon thousands of people. The Gemara says that by the very edge of the building, on the roof, there were 3,000 people. The pasuk says 3,000 people. So the Gemara says that was only by the edge of the roof. So Adrabah, he was massacring many Yiddish neshamas who were in captivity among the Philistine, and he brought them back to the Visha. Shimson is the Reish of the Daya. He was the Shayfet. The Shayfet, he's the Kodesh HaGadashim. He is the Reish of the Daya of Dan. Shimson was pure. Shimson was Kodesh. Shimson never had any hana'ah from Olam Hazeh. He was above that. He had no shaykhs to temptation, no shaykhs to taiva. But the Gemara says, Shimson halach achar einav. Shimson was lured by what his eyes saw. So Rav Tzadok explains that Shimson was Kodesh. However, halach achar einav means he relied on himself. He was the neshamas, he was the nasi of all the neshamas that were rejected. All the neshamas that are rejected have a nasi. The nasi is from Dan. Dan are rejected neshamas. The shayfet of Dan is Shimson. And therefore, because the rejected neshamas, they are the silas, the hair, therefore the kayach of Shimson was in his hair. And when the leader was successful in cutting off his hair, he lost his kayach. Because in his hair were hanging, if we can use that expression, in his hair was connected neshamas who are nidachas, neshamas who are rejected, neshamas who are cut off. But Shimson, by not cutting his hair, kept the neshamas in Klal Yisrael. When his hair was cut off, these neshamas were lost from Klal Yisrael. And therefore, when Shimson's hair was cut off, he lost his kayach. The entire kayach of Shimson was his hair, because he was the shayfet, he was the reish of the neshamas of all the rejected Yidden. However, there's a pasuk in Tanakh that tells us, by Avshalom, when David HaMelech was angry on Avshalom because he killed his brother, and he wanted to have him, he didn't want to see Avshalom. So then, that woman came and tied it with David, V'chayshem Avshalom Svedoti Yidach Nemenu Lidach. The Rebbeinu Shalom thinks, and the Rebbeinu Shalom devises methods, and he devises in Yanan that no Yid shall forever be rejected from Klal Yisrael. Every Yid, sooner or later, in this Gilgal or another Gilgal, will have to come back. Levilti Yidach Mimenu Nidach. No Nidach, no rejectee will be rejected forever. He'll have to come back. So therefore, when Shimson's hair started growing back, that means that these neshamas came back to Gilgal. And he was able then to gather and muster his own strength and break and he was not with that bias. And he just pushed the pillars and the whole building came tumbling down. Whatever I said until now is in the Sefer Yisrael Kedashim from Rav Tzadok Efani. But there are still some unanswered questions. If the way Rav Tzadok explains that Shimson was devoid of any taiva, he was free of temptation, he was a tzaddik who never had a nerve from Olam Hazeh and didn't care for Olam Hazeh. His hana'as, his gratifications came only from his dveikus with the Rebbeinu Shalom. So why does the Mishnah say this in Hebron? Shimson halach achar einav. Shimson was lured by what his eyes saw, the Bnei Philistine. And therefore, because of his eyes, he suffered, and his eyes were plucked out by the Philistine, as the pasuk tells us. Why Why? What's pshat? If he was such a tzaddik, what's pshat that he was lured after his eyes? Well, we'll continue to explain, building on what Reb Tzadok already has explained. And we will try to build another layer of bricks on the billion which Reb Tzadok already built up. Shimson was the last of the Shoftim. In the whole Sefer Shoftim we have quite a number of Shoftim who helped out Yidden from their enemies until there was Malachim by Yidden. Shimson was the very last one. Shimson corresponds with the last Navi. There was a last Navi by Klal Yisrael. He was Malachi. Malachi says Nevuah for the last generation, until the generation that they will see Eliyahu Navi. And the last words of Malachi, the last Navi, his last words are, his last message is, Hine Anochi Shalech Lachem Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi is coming, I am the last Navi. There will be no other Navi from now until Mashiach comes. So my Nevuah has to serve you and has to last you over the stretching ocean of Golus until you reach the banks of Geula, where Eliyahu Navi will come and he will be the next Navi after me. So, being that Malachi, the last Navi, speaks to the last generation, it follows that Shimson, the last Shofet, is the Shofet for the last generation. Now, it says in Shulchan Aruch that when an infant is born, and we want to ascertain that he is a Ben Kayama, that he is not a neifel, is not like a stillborn child that will die before 30 days. If you want, how do we know that he is complete? That he already went through all these stages of development that a blood has to go through. We can tell if he has hair and nails. If he has hair and nails when he's born, it means that he's a Ben Kayam. He's complete, he's going to live, and accordingly, it didn't have communis in halacha. He's not a naifel. Now, the hair is the last thing in the fetus, the last thing in the unborn child which develops. Once the hair develops, it means that the entire body is already developed. He's not a naifel. He went through the entire process of the Tisha Yachel, because the hair already developed by him. We, Klal Yisrael, are waiting for a Leida, for a birth. Bias Mashiach is called the Leida. The period before Mashiach, the birth pains before Mashiach are called Chevlei Leida. The coming of Mashiach, the pasuk says, "Ben yulad lanu yelad nitan lanu." A child is born, the Geula. That's a Leida. We are the hair. We are the last stage in the development of Klal Yisrael before Mashiach comes. Our generation already was mashlim. We completed the structure of Klal Yisrael, what we have to be Mesakin in the Golos. We are ready for the Leida. Our hair is growing. We are the hair of the historical Kaima Shleim of Klal Yisrael. Ikvus of the Mashiach. Shimson, the Reish of the Daya of Dan being the last one, like the pasuk says by Yishai the Dan Rachrona Yisrael, their last. Shimson is the Reish of the Daya Achron, of the last Daya. Just like over 2,000 years ago, Malachi was the Navi of our generation. So here also, Shimson was a Shafet of our generation. The last Shafet, like Malachi, was the last Navi. Dan is an Yasif L'Chala Machnes. He gathers together the Avedas, the lost articles, the lost mitzvahs, the lost nishamas, Avoda Machnes. And the Pasuk says by Dan, they travel last. We are done. We travel last. The pasuk, which ushers in Shimson, says, "Vayhi ish echad mi mishpachas Hadani." There was a man from the mishpacha of Dan, and his name was Menayach. Mi mishpachas Hadani is the gematria Ikvos Mashiach. Being that he's from Dan, he's going to represent the last generation of Mashiach. He did live about 3,000 years ago, but he represents the last, he is the Shofet of Aladaya. His Ruach, his essence, is the Shofet of Aladaya. The year of Shimson or Kadeshim, he was a Nazir. And Kadesh Yiyagadu Parasah Rosha, the hair on his head was Kadesh. Because when Mashiach will come, we will come to Matziv where Kala Eida Kulam Gedashim. Everybody will do tshuva and everybody will be happy. The last generation, the Daya that will see Mashiach, are going to be Kulam Tzaddik and Kulam Brud and Kulam Gedashim. Kala Eida Kulam Gedashim. And they are the heir of Klal Yisrael, the last development of Klal Yisrael, the heir which developed last, at the end of the Tisha Yachid Leida. We are the heir. No one will be rejected. A Nazir represents Klal Yisrael, his heir represents Ikvos of the Mashiach. Levilti Yidach Mimenu Nidach. Get the barber away. These here aren't supposed to be cut off. No neshama will ever be rejected from Klal Yisrael, the Navi says. Levilti yidach mimenu nidach. Even though here is cut off, and the barber discards them, he throws them away. There are dinim in the Gemara how to get rid of the hair. But usually we get rid of them. But a Nazir is different. A Nazir's hair aren't rejected. A Nazir's hair don't go to Chutz Lamachane. At the end of his Naziris, his hair comes to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Azara. And the Pasuk says, V'gilach ha-Nazir Pesach Ayil Mayit. The Nazir should take a haircut on the Pesach Ayil Mayit, in the Har HaBayis. And V'lakach ha-Sar Reish Nizrai, he should take the hair on his Naziris and put it in the fire under the pot of the Zavach HaShlomim, and it becomes an accessory to the Korbanos, to the Korban Shlomim of the Nazir. The hair is welcomed into the Azara. These hair aren't evicted from Klal Yisrael Chutz Lamachane. Adrabah, the Nazir's hair are brought into the Azara, into the Kedusha, which means Netzcha Yisrael Yechanes. The Rebbeinu Shalom will gather together the rejectees of Klal Yisrael. That will be when Bani Yerushalayim Hashem. The Rebbeinu Shalom built Yerushalayim, Netzcha Yisrael Yechanes. He's going to take the Nedachim and bring them to Yerushalayim, bring them to the Azara. So, it's our generation that has to notice, we are here. We are the last generation. The Goyim think that they can cut us off, that they can discard us, that we're not part of Klal Yisrael. And when we look at our generation and see so many Yidden who can't even say Shema Yisrael, we think that they are from Shaded done and they are Mechus Lamachne. They're rejected from Klal Yisrael. No, it isn't so. Nitzche Yisrael Yechanis. The here will find the way back to the Azara, back to the Beis HaMikdash. And our generation should know that. Esar Rosh Nizrei is the Gematria to Kasev Zeis L'Deir Achren. Our generation should know that. Shimson, when he finally, under the pressure that the leader put upon him, Shimson Seif Kalsaf revealed the secret, and he told the leader what gives him strength. He said, if I am going to cut off my hair, my kayach will depart from me. In galachti v'sami meni kaychi. In galachti v'sami meni kaychi is the gematria ikras of the Mashiach. Our generation of ikras of the Mashiach, our kayach are the hair of Shimson, the hair which should not be cut off. The hair which should find its way back to the Beis HaMikdash, Tachas Zavach HaShlamim. The Yenika of Shimson is rooted in the Ikvayim, in the Ikvus of the Mashiach, in the soul of the structure, the soul and the heel of Adam Rishon, the last part of the structure, the last part of his anatomy. And when the leader asked him, what is your kayach? And he revealed his secret. He told her that my kayach is the Shava Machlefais Reishi, with the seven locks of my hair. That's my kayach. Shava Machlefais is the Gematria Ikvus of the Mashiach. We're finished with our journey in the Goddess, which consists of 49 days. Like you have in Pashas Eva Masay, 49 Masais. Actually, you're going to find 42 Masais, but Rashi says that they went back another 7. Under the Kayach, there's 42 Isis and they become 49 for the purpose of Sphira, to come to the Yodel. Yodel means to come back to the Shalish, the Shafta Nishalach Uzasai. So, these are the Shava Machlefais Reisha, the Shava Shabbasis that bring you to the Yodel. These are the hair of Shimson. So we have to understand, if Shimson was such a tzaddik, if he was devoid of any type of Olam Hazeh, he had no shaykhs to any temptation and lusts that Olam Hazeh has to offer. Why does it say Shimson halachacha einav? He went after his eyes. He was lured with what his eyes saw. He was the tzaddik. Here we have to bring in a certain idea which is Sforim HaGedoshim tell us. Every daya has manhigim. The manhigim are bound to the daya. A manhig of the daya is tied with invisible strings to every one of his flock. Like a rope. They can pull him down. A manhig of the daya consists of 2 parts. His own private life, what he is the tzaddik, but besides, he is tied to the daya, and the daya could affect him. In the Sefer Hadush Yerim, it says that the Hadush Yerim was requested from his Chassidim. He beseeched them, please behave nicely, be Elohim, because if you do a virus, it pulls me down, because I'm your money. If somebody pulls a rope on the bottom, the top of the rope is also going to come down. People who are the subordinates of the money, they're the Talmidim of the money. If they do a virus, they can pull down the money by virtue of the fact that they are tied to them. The money mitzad atzmai, as an individual, can be the biggest tzaddik. but they can be pagan him, that they can blemish him. So therefore, Shimson, that he's the Reish of the Dayim, Adlukas of the Mashiach, Mitzad Atzmai, in his own private life, he was the perfect tzaddik. But we, Yidden of Tov Shimson of Beis, we are the Cyrus. We are the Neshamas that Shimson is our Shofet. He's from Shevet Dan. We can pull him down retroactively. By our Averis now, we can pull him down 3,000 years ago. Just like Rashi brings in the Chumash, the year they've added done. That when Avraham Avinu pursued the Abba Malachim, so he wasn't able to pursue them when he came to Dan, because hundreds of years later, Dan is the people of Dan are going to worship an Avodah Zarah in the land of Dan, the Avodah Zarah of Yerodam. So I see that an Aveira that Yidden are going to do hundreds of years later can affect a tzaddik who's bound to them hundreds of years before. We are responsible for what tragedies happened to Shimson. It's our fault. Yankov Avinu, when he saw Shimson, thought that he's Mashiach. That Yehi Dan Nachash Alei Derech. Dan should be like the Nachash on the road. Yankov thought that he's Mashiach, but when he saw his demands, he said, no, he's not Mashiach, he died. Yeshuasecha Kirisi Hashem. The Banishrael Mahovim Pyo Yeshua. Send the real Mashiach. Yidon Nachash Alei Derech. Yisrael say Arenes, Nachash is the Gematria Mashiach. Because Mashiach is going to be the adversary of the Nachash, who brought Mitzvah on the world. Mashiach is going to bring Chayim on the world. So he's against the Nachash. Yankov thought that he's going to be Matzliach and really be the real Mashiach. So therefore, Nachash Alei Derech is the Gematria, the will to Yidach Mimenu Yidach. Yankov thought he's going to bring back all the rejected Yidden and hand them over to the Geula. Seif Kosef, the Rebbe, to come to the Tikkun. Every Yid was Seif Kosef come to his perfection. Shimson went down to the lowest madreikas of Tumah, to the Tumah of mamzerim. These are the Philistine. And he had his encounters with the women of the Philistine in order to be Misakin Neshamas that were lost among the Philistines. There are such Neshamas. Today there are such Neshamas. Today there are Yidden with intermarriage, Nebuch, and the statistics are very high, the percentage is very high. Intermarried Yidden whose Neshamas get lost among the Areilim, among the Philistines. And that's why Shimson went down to the Areilim to be Misakin Neshamas of our generation, Neshamas who are lost among the Philistines. Rashi says, in Parashas Noach, as paslusim v'eskasluchim asher yatzu mehem Philistine. So Rashi says the Philistine were all mamzerim that came out from the intermarriages of the Kaslusim and the Kasluchim. They were all mamzerim. Shimson wanted to go among the Philistine, among the women of the Philistine, to be misakin those who were lost among the Philistine, intermarried neshamas who got lost among the Philistine. These are those neshamas of today, this is the Mashiach. In another sefer of his, Kapsadik Akarim and Sefer Pakik Akaris tells us that the Philistine are the Tumah of Yisrael. I'll tell you something that I believe that most of you, or perhaps all of you know already, that in the 7 weeks of Sphira, we are Misakin 7 meters. The 6th week is Yisait. Yisait means the Kedusha of Zera Yisrael. The Kedusha of the reproduction of Zera Kodesh of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, a Yid is supposed to be Kodesh in Kedushas Arayos, in Kedushas Abris, which is the Brisa Shel Avraham Avinu, so that his Zera should be Kodesh. This is called Midas Yisrael, the sixth Midah. So therefore, Yosef HaTzadik, the sixth of the Yeshbizim, had his Nisyonos with Midas Yisrael in his encounter with the Eshes Potiphera, and he was then Zocher to the distinction of being called Yosef HaTzadik. So Rav Tzadik explains that the Pasuk says Mitzrayim had 6 children, 7 children. Mitzrayim is the klipa of Yisrael. Yisrael by Yidin is Kedusha Sabris, Kedusha Avarayis, pure family life, pure Kedusha. By Mitzrayim, they're the opposite. Like Rashi brings Mechumash, Mitzrayim Ashtufei Zima. The land of Mitzrayim is called Ernas Ha'oretz, the opposite of Kedushas of Yisrael. So the Tzaddik explains that Mitzrayim had 7 children, and the 6th one is Kasluchim. From them came out the Philistine. In other words, Mitzrayim is the tumor of Yisrael. Kasluchim is Yisrael Sheba Yisrael. The tumor should be tumor of Yisrael. Not only Tumas Yisrael, but Tumas Yisrael Sheba Yisrael. The 6th of the 6th. That's how the Tzaddik explains it. That's why he says that the Philistine are called Arayim. Coming back to our Indian, Shimson, through his death, when the building came falling down because he pushed the pillars with his heavenly strength, Shimson advanced. And he released the neshamas of captivity that were among the Philistines. So we could be around that. Me eating tahel mitame. Because sometimes from a tahel can come out. From the Bnei Philistine, Shimson made a tahel come out. The taken are those Yidden who were nitma, who were lost among the Zera of the Philistines. When Shimson was a chassan, and he had, if those of you who remember it from the Pesukim and Shoftim, he told the Philistine, he's going to tell them a riddle, and let them figure it out. How could it be, and from something strong, a sweet thing can come out? Because Shimson, on his traveling, was attacked by a lion. Shimson just took the lion by his jaws and ripped them apart, and he killed the lion that way. After a while, Shimson came back to the corpse of the lion, and he saw a beehive there with honey. So he saw that from the lion, which is as, honey came out. So he told the Philistine, I'll tell you a riddle. How could it be that from a strong one, which is bitter, like a lion, honey should come out? Tell me what it is. And they didn't know, so they found out from the wife of Shimson what it meant. The Pasuk tells us this little story. The Pesukim and Shoftim don't speak about nonsense, about a silly little riddle that Shimson told the Philistine, and they weren't able to find out until it was revealed by the wife of Shimson. It means that was Shimson's essence. Meyaz Yatsa Masek. He brought out the sweetness from the from the bitterness. He brought out the sweet Yiddish and the Shamas who were in captivity by the tumor of the Philistine. Therefore, Umeyaz Yatsa Masek is the Gematria Beyasif L'Chalamachnes. That was the tachlis of the Avodah of Shimson. That's the Shevet Edom. And he was the Shevet to bring to the Matzav aber weil ha'ivden be'eretz Asher, when the Drachen be'eretz Mitzrayim, and by the Shofar of Mashiach, Mishtachel of Hashem, Bar HaKodesh Mirushalayim. Now, we are a generation that unfortunately, tragically, we are a generation of Yiddish and Neshamas in captivity by the Sitcha Ach, by the Klipa of the Christian, intermarriage. And there are so many Neshamas that are in captivity by the Satan, and the Kayach of Shimson he's going to release them. There is a Kayach in every one of the Umas Ha'olam, the 7 Umas of Eretz Yisrael, which are multiplied by 10, and they become the 70 nations. Each one of them is a bad leader. And a certain clip. In Tanakh we have the Philistine. Everything that you find in Tanakh is Mitzvahs. Anything which is in the Torah isn't what a history, a story. If the Torah tells us, if you find that in every generation, there are Philistine today. There is a clip of Philistine today. Who are today's Philistine? Now, let's first find out who is Yisod of Tula today. We know that Yidin Tzadikim, who are Nizar with their eyes, Nizar with their machshavos, Nizar with their Eiverim, they have Kedushas Yosef Tzadik, the Kedusha of Yisod. The opposite is Tumas HaYisod. Who is the need of Yisod B'Tuna that the Tzadik talks about they are Mitzrayim, and who is Yisod Sheb'Yisod that they are the Philistine? Who are they? The Gemara says in Kedushin, Asara Kabin's Nus Yod Aliyoyim, Tisha Yod Notru Arabim. There are 10 measures of Znus came down to the world. The Arabs took 9 of them. They're the Khalifa of Yisrael. Even though we may think that seemingly the Arabs are tzniyazik, the way the women are dressed, it's a Moedik tzniyaz, it's overemphasized tzniyaz, it's no. This is explained in Sfarim, that by the Goyim, whatever they're really wicked in, whatever they're degenerated in, that's where they show that they are good. Like the Chazer, who shows his kosher paws. The Chazer is patient l'fayim. Every animal, when it's dressed, their legs are under the body. But the Chazer displays his legs. I have kosher legs. They are mafchis palsa. There's a crack in the hoof. But he's tummy. And Adarabah, this Chazer is the most tummy one of all the Chayis Mayas. He's the worst one. And when we want to talk about something which is really tummy, we say the Chazer. Tummy like a Chazer. Treif like a Chazer. So they display their goodness in the Indian in which they are really degenerated. The Yishmaelim are the Klipa of Yisod. The Yishmaelim have something in common with Kedushas HaYisod. They have the mitzvah of Mila. They're Mala themselves. And the Zohar Kodesh says that when the Rabbeinu Shalom promised Avraham Avinu Eretz Yisrael by the mitzvah of Mila, so the Sar of Yishmael came and argued, I'm also Gemalit. I should also have Eretz Yisrael. So the Rabbeinu Shalom answered, when Yidden are in Galus and Eretz Yisrael is empty, you are going to have Eretz Yisrael. Your Mila is empty. Your Mila has no content in it. There's no substance to your Mila. It's not a bliss.
your tongue, your Mila doesn't show anything. So just like your Mila is empty, you're going to have Eretz Yisrael when it's empty. So all through the Golas, Eretz Yisrael was barren and empty, and the Ishmaelim generally were in control of Eretz Yisrael. Now, Baruch Hashem, Eretz Yisrael is being filled up by Eden, which means that it's not empty anymore, which means that Yishmael is going to be evicted from Eretz Yisrael any day now, any hour now, any second now. So therefore, Yishmael feels it, the sound feels it, and that's why we understand the uproar of Yishmael today. That's why we find that they are so energetic today, and that they're so vicious today. They feel their end is coming, just like somebody who's wrestling and feel that he's losing. He's going to try to mobilize all his koiches, to be strong, to overcome. So the Yishmael, that's why we have this uproar of the Yishmaelim today. They're the klipa of Yisayit, because Yisayit Tiglisha is the Mila of Bnei Yisrael. B'risha shel Avram Avinu. Yisayit the Tumah is the false Mila, the Shekadika Mila of the Bnei Yishmael. So today's Yishmaelim have called themselves a new name. They call themselves Philistine. The klal is that a name gives substance to something. The Rashba, two Judas, the Rashba says that the key of a davar is in its name. With a name, we can pass in halachas. The Gabi min b'nina in Yeridaya, a chagav, a certain type of a locust is kosher, but only if it's called chagav. It can be mamish the identical locust, but if it's not called chagav, it's tummy. The name makes it kosher. A name is everything. Rabbi Nachman Radanka says, Nefesh Chaya Hu Shmai. A name is the Nefesh Chaya. If somebody calls himself a name, he confers upon himself whatever that name really represents. If today's Arabs call themselves Philistine or Palestinian, Philistines, Philistine, they're called Philistine, Prussians, Yeshve Prussians, Philistine, Palestinian. They call themselves Philistine. They have the Tumah of the Yesod, the Yesod of Tumah. They are the Philistine. So therefore, just like we see that Shimson was Ma'aser Nefesh to kill the Philistine, even though it meant that he's dying with it, they're the opposite. They're Ma'aser Nefesh to kill Yid, even though they die with it. That's their suicide. So, what I'm saying now, I said in New York also. So somebody remarked that these Palestinian, these terrorists, the pasuk says that they killed, that Shimson killed 3,000 Philistines when he threw the building down. They went and threw down the building in New York and they killed 3,000 people. They're like a monkey that mimics a human being. What is name?
It's also Shimson, a movement of Philistine, they are committing suicide.
That's what I'm saying.
No, I thought your friend.
What? So the Nazir, of Parshas Nazir, is the neshama of Nazir. When the Torah in Parshas Nazir talks about the Nazir, it means Shimshon, the Rosh of the Nazir. However, in Tanakh we find two Nazirim. The first one is Shimshon, and afterwards there's another Nazir, and that's Avshalom. Avshalom, the Gemara says in Nazir, was a Nazir Oilam, and he was hung up by his hair. Avshalom is also a Nazir.
But Avshalom rebelled against his father. That's a mamish like a Beitazara. The father represents the Rabban Shalom, Haloyehu Avicha Kanecha. But still, David HaMelech was misaking him, like the Gemara says, when he said 8 times B'ni Avshalom, Avshalom B'ni. Avshalom came to his tikkun. Avshalom, Saf Kosaf, he came to Shalom with his father. Apella v'hafla. This is something really remarkable. Avshalom is the Nazir. The purpose of the Nazir, the tafkid of the Nazir is Ashavas Havein, to bring Yidden back who are rejected. Like the pasuk says, "Levilti yidach mimenu nidach." Where do we find the pasuk in Tanakh which says, "Levilti yidach mimenu nidach"? By Avshalom. When the Yisha Chachama came to defend him, because David HaMelech wanted to have him rejected and he should go away, so the Isha said, "Levilti yidach mimenu nidach." The Rabban Shalom lets know he's being rejected. It was after by Avshalom that the time was Megala of this side. Avshalom, with the myriad as Isis, is the Gematria Hashem Teshivne. He's in the Shem of Hashavas Havein. Here is supposed to be cut off. However, there are certain here which are not supposed to be cut off. The Payis and the Zaken. That the Yud Gimel Midei Shel Rachamim. Adarabah, they bring Rachamim in Klal Yisrael. The Nazir is such, because that shows that there is a Midas Rachamim that won't let Yidden be rejected. Whoever has a beard and Payis is Mamshech Rachamim on himself and on Klal Yisrael, like the Zayah says. So therefore, the Nazir does more than that. Even the hair of the head, which is supposed to be cut off, but by him, he doesn't cut it off. Because he represents the Indian that Klal Yisrael can never be rejected. The Vilti Yidach Mimenu Nidach. So when the pasuk speaks about the Nazir, the pasuk speaks about Shimson and Avshalom. The pasuk speaks about here, about Ikvas of the Mashiach. Our Misham is that we are the here. Ki afli linda neda nazir b'gematria Ikvas Mashiach. We are the Daya that in the mitzvah of Nazir wants to be Mekadosh us and bring us back to our Shaivish. Now, there's a big problem that whatever you find in Nefesh, you find in Zman. And also in love. We discussed that, I think, last year, 2 years ago. Whatever you find in Nefesh, in the Shabbos, is duplicated also in Zman. So if we find in the Torah an Inyan of the Nefesh with a Nazir, like Shimson, there's also a Zman of Nazir. There's a certain Zman in the calendar, that Zman is the Nazir. Just like Shimson, the Nazir, his Kayach is in the Sayavus, and he's the tikkun of the lowest Neshamas. He represents the lowest Yidden of Klal Yisrael, the last generation. So there's also a period in the calendar which is the Nazir of the calendar. And these are the Bein HaMitzarim and the 9 days. The lowest part of the year, some Sefer calls it Achris Hayam, the lowest part of the year. Bein HaMitzarim has a shaykhus to the Sayavus. So therefore, just like a Nazir is not allowed to cut off his hair and is not supposed to drink wine, so the 9 days we don't cut our hair and we don't drink wine. These 9 days are days of the Nazir, just like Shimson and Avshalom are the Shammos of the Nazir. These are days of the Nazir. And just like the Nazir, Shimson, shows that a time will come, Levilti Yidach Mimenu Nidach, and all these Yidden, these rejected Yidden, these Yidden are different to the Mashiach, who are the Cyrus, Adarabah, they're going to be the greatest generation. They're going to become, they're going to actually be transformed into the day of Mashiach to become the greatest generation. So these days of the Yemei HaMetzarim, they're going to be the biggest days. Like the Navi says, Zechariah Navi, Tzayma Ravi, V'tzayma Chamish, Yegiyah, L'beis Yehuda, L'sasin, L'simcha, U'lemayadem Tayven. The Sfarim say when Mashiach will come, these 9 days will be the greatest, the most happy and jolly days of the entire year. They're going to be total simcha. These are the nazir of the year, and they're going to turn into L'mayadem Tayven, the Navi says. L'mayadem Tayven is the Gematria Nazir. These are days of Nazirus, that you're not allowed to cut off your hair and drink wine. These are low days, days that are rejected by Klal Yisrael. We don't enjoy these days. We despise these days. Adarabah. That will become the biggest days. Now, let's understand. What happened to Shimson? Shimson, halach achareinu. He was lured by what his eyes saw. Shimson is a big tzaddik that has no temptation, actually no yetzirah. That's as far as Shimson, the individual Shimson, is concerned. But as far as he being the Reish of our generation, 3,000 years ago, he already acted and he lived a life to be the second our generation. We are his Talmidim. We are attached to him. Every one of us is bound to Shimson. We are the hair of Shimson's head. So therefore, we can pull down Shimson. If Shimson 3,000 years ago had a begun in his eyes, it wasn't Shimson's fault. We pulled him down. Just like the Kadosh Yerim beseeches Talmidim, don't pull me down with your Avedas. Our Yidden, who walk in the streets, in Tavshin Samach Beis, and if any one of us is not careful with our eyes, he retroactively makes it begun in Shimson's eyes and the Salach Achareinu. We are responsible for whatever happened to Shimson. We were Mikalko Shimson. In Baki Dakos, in a very, very fine way that we can't understand. But that's so. So therefore, we have to be Misaking, our generation has to be Misaking to the Gamarinayim. The klal is that every individual and every day has something to be Misaking. Something that's its tafkid. That's why it came down in this world. We came down in this world to be Misaking the eyes of Shimson. And the klal is that whenever somebody asks to be Misaking something, he finds that thing most difficult. Because the Satan doesn't, because that's the purpose of this coming down here, so the Satan doesn't let him be Misaking it. There was never a generation since the day of Amavi that had such nisyanis and shmiras enayim as our day. It's terrible. Every year it gets worse and worse. It's just such a rachmanis and Yiddish Berchim and Yiddish men of all ages that they have to go through the torment and the torture that anyone has when he goes into the streets and tries to have some shmiras enayim, tries to keep his eyes heilig. And especially in these two chadashim, the Nisyanis are very big. The chadashim of Chor and Tamaz and that the Gemara calls it Eini Yer Demayim. The Ariya Kadi says that each chaydish corresponds to one of the Eiverim in the head. And Tamaz and Nav are the two Einayim. In Tamaz and Nav, the Nisyanis are the Einayim are the most intense Nisyanis. It's very, very difficult. But that's our tafkid. When Shimson wanted to be Misaking, and he asked the Rabbanah Shlomo to give him back his strength, and that he should be able to do a nikama on the Philistine. So Shimson said, Zachreini na v'chaskeini na achapam. Please, Rabbi Shalom, give me strength. Please remember me. Chaskeini na achapam. Give me chizuk. Rabbi Shalom, I need chizuk. I can't do it myself. I'm a human being. I'm weak. I need you to help me, Rabbi Shalom. I should be able to be strong enough and heilig enough that I should be worthy, and I should merit the schus of bringing the nekam of the Philistine. The nekam achas me'einai me'aflishtim. So this is what our Torah is screaming. We should scream that whenever somebody goes into the street or even in the house. These Nisyanis have invaded into our homes. The literature that comes into the homes, the television and the internet and the newspapers, the radio, the whatnot, everything. These are Nisyanis of Shmiras Sabris. These are Nisyanis and this is the Nisyanis of our Torah. To bring back Eretz Yisrael to Klal Yisrael, through the mitzvah that Rabbi Shalom gave to Avraham Avinu, that that's because he merits Eretz Yisrael. Kedusha Sabris, Kedusha Shel Avraham Avinu, which starts with Kedusha Sanayim, those Achrayim, Neichem Asher Adam Zayim Achrayim. This is the tefillah of our Torah. Adonai Elokim, Zachreini na v'chaskeini na achapam. This tefillah is for Ritvus of the Mashiach. This was the tefillah, the last tefillah of Shimson, when the Rabbi Shalom helped him and he did give him the chizuk, and he was able to do the nekam of the Philistine. Adonai Elokim, Zachreini na v'chaskeini na achapam, is the gematria Ikvais Mashiach. The Russian of the Gemara on Sinatum, the Ikvais Mashiach. This is the tefillah of our generation. In the Yankov Avinu, when he saw Shimson, he said, Yitam nachash alei derech shishun alei eirach, hanoisheich ikvei sus, v'yipor reich v'yachar. He bites the heels of the horse. And if you bite the heel, if the serpent bites the heel, the whole horse falls down, comes tumbling down with his rider. And noisheich ikvei sus. The Philistine, as we said before, they're not playing the Yisayt of Tumah. The Yisayt should be Yisayt, like a tzaddik says. Therefore, sus is the animal which is Tumas Yisayt. The Gemara says that the sus, Zeh Masusim Yomasam, the pasuk brings, the Gemara brings that pasuk. The susim are Malay Taiva, the Malay Zima. Now, sus starts with the samach. Samach is the completion of the site. 10 times 6. Sus ends with the samach, which is Yisayt shel Yisayt. What is the root of the sus? The vav in the middle, which is again 6. Sus is the klippa of Yisayt, not Yisayt. Yisayt shel Yisayt. Hanoisheich ikvei sus v'yipor reich v'yachar. So when the Torah says, "B'yayim aleis yimein Israel," when the day of the Nazirus will be fulfilled, which speaks about Shimson, the Nazir, the Neshama of Nazir, the Indian means Shimson. In the day of aleis yimein Israel, that's the day when he took the Nekam and the thousands of the Philistine. When he asked the Rabbi Shalom, Zachreini na Adonai Elokim, Zachreini na v'chaskeini na achapam. B'yayim aleis yimein Israel is the epitaphy of his Nazirus, the climax of his Nazirus. In the day when he's brought to the Azara, B'yayim aleis yimein Israel is the Gematria Shimson ben Manoach. That's him. That's what the Torah is referring to. Shimson started
And we have to finish. Mashiach will finish. It's Yishmael, Yisrael Yisrael, the Philistine, the Palestinian, the Philistines, it's them that are the Yisrael Yisrael to them. And there, just like the Metzius, the existence of a Malek in the world, brings to Avodah Zarah, like the Sfarim say, like the Alishab explains the Parsha of B'Shalach and the Parsha of Amalek, the very existence of the Goyim of Amalek, their physical existence, that is, they are the Merkava, they are the chariot with which the clip of Avodah Zarah comes down, of Kfir and Minus. Yishmael, the Philistine, they're the Kripa of Zuz. And therefore, Yosef was sold by the Philistine to Israel. Every Yid has a nitzitz of Yosef in himself. The Kedusha of Bris, the Philistine, the Yishmaelim, they're the ones who sold Yosef to Mitzrayim, to the Erbas Ha'aretz, that he should go through all these Nisyanis. V'yiknei Batifa Sres Parei V'yad HaYishmaelim Asher Haridu Shama. Pinchas Eliyahu, like Asher says in last week's Sedra, took the Kama and the Medanim, who also were among the merchants who sold Yosef to Mitzrayim. The Medanim are really the Yishmaelim also. They're also Chayiv Mila. They're the B'nai Ketula. But the Seif of the Nekama has to come through the Nekama over the Yishmaelim. They're the ones who really sold Yosef to Mitzrayim. So Pinchas, who is Eliyahu, he is the one that took Nekama and the Medyanim, the Nekama of Yosef. And Pinchas Eliyahu, he's going to take the Nekam and the Yishmaelim. Because Pinchas Eliyahu, he's the Naikin Nikmas Habris, like he did by Zimri. Eliyahu is a Malach Habris, the one that takes off the oil from Klal Yisrael. So these days are very important days. These days of Nazirus, these 9 days, when the days of the year on the Nazir, that they are also in cutting off their hair and drinking wine, these days are days that if we will concentrate on these days in Avodas Hashem, in Asmada and Torah, in Tefillah, in Shmiras Einayim, in Shmiras Ha'evarim, or Vura Machevarim, in Shmiras HaMachshav, we can actually bring the Yeshua. There is a Melchama going on. Sharon declared war against the terrorists, against the Palestinians, against the Philistine. And people think that the front lines of this war is in Shechem, in Ramallah, wherever, in Hebron. No. The battlefront is here in this medrash, and in all the other Batik Midrashim and Batik Nisiyas of Klal Yisrael. It's not the Shakir Asus L'Shu, the V'reif Chayla Le'emanet. It is only with Torah, with Tefillah, with good midas, with mitzvahs and ma'asim Torah, with Shmiras Einayim, Shmiras Abris, Shmiras HaMachshava, and Shmiras Ha'evarim, that we can vanquish the Kripa of Yishmael. This is our tafkid. Now is the time to have Melchama with the Philistine. Now is the time to have Melchama with Yishmael, with Tumas HaYisayit. That was how the Kedushas HaYisayit. And how is a person Zaycha to Kedushas HaYisayit? Only through Torah. Like the Gemara says, Brasi Yitzhahava, Brasi Torah Tabla. With Torah, and also with Tefillah, and also with Tzedakah,
with Kol Midah Nechayna, having good midas, Ahavas Yisrael, any good midah that a Yid tries to perfect himself with, this is the Milchama against Yishmael. This is the battlefront. The battlefront is in this Besmedrash, in the neighboring Besmedrash, in the Bate Midrashim on Yerushalayim, and the Neighborash, and wherever there's a Yiddish Besmedrash, here in Eretz Yisrael, or in Chutzlaretz, where Yidden learn Torah, where Yidden daven, that's the battlefront. That's where we have Milchama against Yishmael. This is the real Milchama. Anything else is just an image of what's going on in the Bate Midrash. Whatever happens in Ramallah, whatever nitzchaynes, whatever successes the Tzahal has anywhere in Eretz Yisrael is just a mirror of what's happening in the Bate Midrash. How we daven, how we learn. This is the Yeshua of Klal Yisrael. And the Rebbe should help that we should all be Zaycha to V'avaya B'yayim Alu, Yitzhaka B'shayfa Gadayim, and all the avudim, all the lost ones, all the rejected ones should come back. All the hair should grow back. Yitzhaka B'shayfa Gadayim, V'avaya Ha'ivdim B'yatzasha, the lost ones, when Yidach and Yeretz Mitzrayim, and those who are rejected and evicted and they find themselves in the Tumah of Mitzrayim, so the Shayfa God was going to bring them to V'o, V'shtachvo, Hashem, Tahar HaKodesh, Yerushalayim, with all the Yidden together. Amen.